right, so today we're going to make some sourdough loaves. I have already gotten everything in place. Here is what I'm using for flour, and it's 4.5 cups of flour, and 1 cup is going to be wheat, just because that's what I want on here, and the rest is going to be bread flour, but all-purpose works just fine. Uh, and we've got 2 teaspoons of salt, and this is table salt, so I used a little bit less than say I would kosher salt. And the firm starter, that's what happens when you make a seed culture to create the sourdough mix. And then you mix it together, and I put it in the fridge. That'll be your barm. Here, got the barm mixed in, about 2/3 of a cup of barm in with a cup of flour, and let that sit overnight. And you see how bubbly it is. So it's looking just right. So I'm going to mix that in. And scrape that in a little bit. All right, and then mix that pretty well before I add the water. You can even mix all the solids in before you even put in the barm, the firm starter. All right, and I've got 2 cups here. Depending on the weather, you may need a little bit more. But you'll want it to where it's just a little bit sticky. Now, so bread is bread. You can make bread pretty easily. I mean, people have been doing it for tens of thousands of years. The mix that I've made previously, the baguette, I use pretty precise measurements. The ones for the sourdough have been less precise, and honestly, it's sometimes I'll just throw stuff together and get it in the ballpark. All right. I know some people, they hate to knead. That's part they like the least about making bread. And I know that there are some recipes that they say are no kneading. I think kneading is important. Time can make up for that to some extent, but the kneading does a couple different things. It helps mix and hydrate more thoroughly. Also, it helps break down the proteins in the flour, 2 different proteins that form gluten. Gluten is the sticky bit. Gluten is the reason that bread can rise, because it catches the gases that are put off by the yeast as a byproduct. So that's why the bread rises from fermentation. That's why rye bread will not rise, why it's very dense, unless you've got some wheat or something mixed in with it. As far as how long you need this, a lot of it is just by touch. You see, as I'm putting it together and kneading it, it's getting a little more coherent. Um, one author says that if you can stretch it to where you can have light shine through it without it breaking, that's how you want it to be. Yeah, I know a lot of folks are into fast bread. I'm seeing lots of things about bread done quickly. Yeah, you could do quick bread. Honestly, it doesn't taste as good to me. All right, we're back, and as you can see, it's grown quite a bit. So that's pretty much what we're looking for. Um, put a little bit of flour on the counter and gently ease it out. Now I'll shape it. I'll cut this in half. You don't have to. You can have this as big or as little as you want. So, carefully, because you don't want to roughhouse this thing too much. Get it into a more or less a ball. There we go. All right, what I'm going to do here for shaping, it sticks just a little bit to the counter. So roll it to kind of tighten up the surface, get some surface tension. All right. This one, I'm going to shape it into a round loaf. And I'm going to take a bowl. Coat it liberally with flour. And slip it in there. Yeah, pinch the bottom shut. And cover it up. This one, I'm going to have it slightly longer. And I'm going to put it in this brat form. Again, don't want it sticking. All right. And you want to have it fairly humid. So from time to time, I'll spray these down and keep them just a little bit damp. Not really wet, but a little bit damp. And I will let them rise for about 2 hours, give or take. And once that's done, then they should be ready to go in the oven. Brat form, it is made out of kind of wicker, and it's it's to help when the dough rises. It needs something to kind of shape it, and so you can get them in different shapes. I've seen them in baguette shapes, large and round. This is sort of a oblong, smallish, medium sized. Uh, and I usually put them in a tea towel. You could just sprinkle flour in it and put it in there without without the towel, but that's entirely up to you. Um, yeah, I've got actually a couple of these. This one I like because it's got measurements on it, so it just helps me to kind of um, be a little bit more precise and just kind of rule of thumb. Um, the You can get these in you order them in King Arthur or some other bread or baking type thing. There's a pastry cutter. It's just I use them a lot. They're a go-to. Um, so I recommend. That said, bread you can cut them with any kind of knife. Uh, Start off working with what you've got in your kitchen, and then add along and along. That's what I've been doing. When I started bread making, I had no special equipment. Over the years, Father's Day and birthday, I'd ask for one implement or another, and now I've got a pretty good selection, which makes the bread making more efficient, more enjoyable. Learn how to make bread and acquire the accoutrements as you go along. And we're back. It's been about 2.5 hours, and it's risen. So here we go. Did pretty well. It could rise a little bit more, but I think it's going to be all right. Be a little bit close. If you just got one loaf, then this isn't really a problem. But the more loaves you've got, the tighter it's going to be. What I'll end up doing is putting. What I usually do is I will I'll put them in the oven, and it's at 500. It's preheated to 500, and I will put water in there, boiling water for steam, in the pan underneath, and then once it's got good and steamed, I'll turn the temperature down to 450, and about 10-12 minutes later, I'll go in there and rearrange the loaves. If they've kind of grown together, then I'll separate them, and then leave it in there for another 15 minutes. And that should be all it'll require. Every week should be good. Every 2 weeks is kind of pushing it. A lot of people do a lot of different patterns. Some do some pretty simple ones. But the purpose of scoring it like this, part of it is to let air out if you've got some big bubbles in there. But a big part of it is to give the bread room to expand so it'll rise more. And that's also what the steam is for. It keeps as the dough is starting to heat up in the oven, the yeast goes into overdrive. The yeast goes into overdrive, and so it's really making the bread expand until the heat gets so high that it kills the yeast. Having the steam in there keeps the surface of the bread soft enough so that it can expand. It has a little bit of stretch there. So the slashes are also part of that. It gives it room to expand. And here we go. We baked for about 25 minutes, and it came out really well. See how large they are? The initial whole loaf, when I first put it to proof, was smaller than this, so it had good rise on them. A little dark on the bottom, which is the way I like it. And it worked out pretty well. And time in the kitchen wasn't appreciably longer than if I was doing a quick bread. It's just it was spaced out over the course of a couple days. And this is yeast that you don't have to buy. All you have to pay for is flour and salt. And the yeast provides itself. So thanks for watching. Give it a shot. Let me know how it works. And leave us a comment in the comment section.